Your body already knows how to shut stress down. It's got a whole system built for it, a biological off switch that drops cortisol, pulls adrenaline back, and tells your nervous system to stand down. Most people never use it because nobody showed them where it is. We're going to fix that right now. There are 12 specific spots on your body, from your head down to your feet, that plug directly into that system. Press the right ones the right way, and your physiology actually changes. Not metaphorically, measurably. Let's go through all 12. Number 1, third eye point. Most people rub their forehead when they're stressed without realizing they're already close to something that actually works. Right between the eyebrows, there's a point called yin tang, known clinically as EXHN3, and it sits directly over a nerve cluster that feeds into the parasympathetic nervous system, the part responsible for pulling your body out of alarm mode. Press it with one finger, steady and firm, and hold it for 30 seconds. What you're doing is stimulating the supratrochlear nerve, which carries a signal back to the brain that says the threat is gone. Clinical research links this point to slower heart rate and reduced mental overload. It works on the front end of stress, before tension locks into your neck and shoulders. Number 2, temple pressure point. When most people get a stress headache, they press their temples, but they're usually a fingertip too far forward, missing a point called tai yang that sits in the small hollow just behind the outer corner of the eyebrow. Stress headaches aren't random. The temporal muscles clamp down as part of the fight-or-flight response because the body's preparing the jaw and skull for a physical confrontation that never actually comes. And that sustained muscle contraction is what builds into the headache. Taiyang sits directly over the temporal branch of the trigeminal nerve, one of the most active nerve pathways in the skull. Press it with circular pressure for 30 seconds, and you're not just loosening a tight muscle, you're cutting the nerve signal that's keeping the tension running. Number 3, ear shen men point. There's a point inside the ear called shen men, which translates to spirit gate, and it's been used in addiction recovery programs and military PTSD treatment. Not because of tradition, but because the ear has a denser concentration of vagal nerve endings than almost anywhere else on your body. The vagus nerve runs the parasympathetic nervous system, and most of it sits too deep to touch. The ear is one of the few places where a branch runs close enough to the surface to stimulate directly. Shen men sits in the small triangular depression in the upper third of the ear's cartilage. Press it with a fingernail or pen tip for 30 to 60 seconds, and you're sending signals up the vagus nerve straight toward the brainstem, which controls heart rate, digestion, and the full shift out of fight or flight. Number 4, base of skull point. Run your fingers up the back of your neck until you hit the base of your skull, and feel those 2 thick muscle columns running up either side of the spine. Right where they meet the skull, there are 2 points called GB20, and that's where chronic stress tension collects and just stays. Those muscles connect directly to the membrane that wraps your brain and spinal cord, so when they're tight, they're actually pulling on that tissue. That's the physical mechanism behind the foggy, heavy-headed feeling that stress creates and won't let go. Press both points simultaneously with your thumbs, tilt your head back slightly, hold 30 seconds. Blood flow to the back of the brain increases, and that fog starts to clear. Number 5, shoulder well point. The trapezius runs from the base of your skull all the way across your upper back, and it's one of the first muscles to lock up when stress hits. There's a point at its highest peak, called Jianjing or GB21, roughly halfway between the neck and the tip of the shoulder, and pressing it with firm downward pressure from the opposite hand for 30 seconds can break the whole tension cycle. Chronic trapezius tension compresses the brachial plexus and keeps the nervous system reading the body as threatened, because tight muscles signal danger the same way a loud noise does. When the muscle lets go, that threat signal drops. Number 6, inner wrist. Calm point. PC6 or Niguan sits 3 finger widths up from your wrist crease on the inner forearm, right between the 2 tendons you can feel when you flex your wrist. It's one of the most studied pressure points in Western clinical research, partly because it's easy to find, and partly because its effects on heart rate and nausea show up clearly enough in controlled trials to take seriously. Press it with your opposite thumb for 30 seconds while breathing slowly. Those acupressure wristbands people wear for motion sickness target this exact spot. The nausea relief is real, but the broader calming effect on the autonomic nervous system goes well past the gut. Number 7, palm center point. Make a loose fist and look at where your middle finger lands on your palm. That spot is Laogong, or PC8, and it sits right over the palmar branch of the median nerve, the same nerve pathway that runs up through your wrist and connects back toward the chest. Press the center of your palm with your opposite thumb, firm circular pressure for 30 seconds, and you're giving that impulse somewhere useful to go while sending a calming signal back up the nerve pathway toward the heart. Number 8. Webbing between thumb and index finger. Squeeze your thumb and index finger together and look for the highest point of the muscle bulge that forms in the webbing. That spot is Hegu, or Li4, and it's one of the most studied pressure points in all of acupressure, with enough clinical trials behind it that even skeptical Western researchers don't dismiss it. Press your opposite thumb firmly into that spot and hold it for at least 30 seconds. The clinical literature links it to headaches, toothaches, eye pain, and nasal congestion, and the reason it covers so much ground is that pain and stress run on overlapping neural pathways, so reducing the pain signal load directly drops the burden on your sympathetic nervous system. Number 9. Solar plexus point. Stress doesn't just live in your head. The gut has its own nervous system, roughly 100 million neurons running the whole digestive tract, and chronic stress hits it hard, slowing digestion, increasing gut permeability, and pulling blood flow away from the intestinal lining over time. CV12 sits 4 finger widths above your navel, right on the midline of your abdomen. Press it with 2 or 3 fingers. Gentle circular pressure, 30 seconds. That stimulates the vagal branches running through the stomach wall, which connect directly to the brain stem. Number 10. Inner forearm relaxation point. Higher up the same forearm, about 4 finger widths from the wrist crease, there's a point called PC4, and it targets a different branch of the median nerve than the wrist point does. One tied specifically to cardiac regulation and the chest's autonomic control. This matters when anxiety has already gone physical, when your heart's pounding and your chest feels tight, because that's a loop. The physical symptoms read as new threat signals, which drives the stress response harder, which creates more symptoms. Number 11. Top of foot stress relief point. Between the first and second metatarsal bones on top of your foot, about 2 finger widths back from the webbing between your big toe and second toe, there's a point called Tai Chong, or LR3. Clinical acupuncture practitioners use it specifically for stress that's been accumulating over weeks, not hours, along with irritability and muscle tension that won't quit. Press into the groove between those 2 bones with your opposite thumb, firm downward pressure, 30 seconds. What that does is pull blood flow toward the feet and away from the head and chest, where chronic stress concentrates it. Number 12. Ankle calm down point. 3 finger widths above your inner ankle bone, just behind the shin. There's a point called SP6, and it's where 3 major nerve and blood vessel pathways converge in one spot, which is why practitioners use it for sleep problems, hormonal irregularities, digestive issues, and whole body restlessness, sometimes all at once. By the time stress has disrupted your sleep, your digestion, and your mood simultaneously, it's not a single system problem anymore, and single point fixes stop working.